This is the Captain's Arena. My name is Simba Kiage. We are online on Lookup TV across all your social media platforms. I am at Kiage Simba. I'll say it again, it's not often that you find me with piece of paper when I'm introducing the guests on my show. But then I was trying to track the career profile of the next captain on this episode. I said I can just write, I can cram it down. You know, guests that I normally host on this show, they tell me, well, I was here during this period to this period, now I'm here. Nah, it's everywhere. I mean, if I tell you every single thing this guy has done, that's going to be the show and we're going to close the episode and go back home. But no. So I tried to really capture the highlights of the captain who's joining us on the show. But then this is the only way I'm going to introduce him. If you ever read anything about Mandela, I mean, anything authored around Mandela in Africa, then you will know who I'm talking about. If you're going to read anything about Sarah Obama, authored in Africa, then that's the guy that we have on the Captain's Arena today. So now, let me introduce to you one Teddy Warria. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm happy to be at Tamarind Brasserie for the first time in Karen. I went to school at the Nana School just next door, so I feel at home. And I would want to even start by saying my name is Teddy, and Teddy means divine gift in Greek. It was a chosen name that was given to me by my late father George Edward Warria, and my late mother Wilfrida Atieno Ombodo Warria,
yes.
And my mother, who is still alive, called Mama Lea Awino Warria, who lives in Nyakacch. I come from a polygamous East African family. I'm the 10th of 17 children, and I'm deeply proud of my heritage as a Luo African, and also I find my roots from the Nile, so I call also myself Son of the Nile. That's the title of my memoir or autobiography that I wrote during COVID in my village of Kamnoa in the picturesque Nyabondo Plateau, Nyakacch constituency in Kisumu. Yes.
Teddy, your story is a bit complex. Let me get the bits, because in the first part of this conversation,
yes,
we just want to understand who Teddy is, get into his mind,
yes,
so we see what your demeanor essentially
yes,
gets his background from.
yes.
Let me go back a bit, because your story,
yes,
essentially, I mean, your story into what you are,
yes,
today starts at Lenana School.
Yeah.
It's a big name, especially when it comes,
yes,
to the education sector in the country.
Yes.
Your father,
Yes.
was he a man who valued education that much to the
Yeah.
point that he said,
Yeah.
gotta give my son the best
Yeah.
that he can get?
Actually, I would say the person who deeply valued education at home and took a lot of time to train me, teach me, coach me was my late mother, Wilfrida Atieno Ombodo Warria, Nyar Seme Lango.
Yeah.
But my father
Yeah.
made sure that there was enough money for the books, and my father used to buy for me, because my father was a printer and a lithographer,
Yes,
at Print Park and then Cool Graphics. He made sure that whatever books he made, he brought them home. Like there was Jua Kalulu, there was Abunuasi, and these are African books that I don't see them often now, but my father made sure he brought them. My mother read them to me, and also Tintin, Obelix. She made sure we raised reading each cartoon strip. And also there was Jua Kalulu, so she wanted me to also know and understand Swahili. And there was a book which is still there called Reader's Digest. So Reader's Digest has something called Word Power. There are 20, it's a quiz of 20 difficult vocabularies, which is an objective test that you test your vocabulary. So my mother made sure every end of the month she bought for me a Reader's Digest and made sure I read it. And Reader's Digest has a lot of positive stories from all over the world, mainly North America. So I grew up imagining a lot of things about North America, but it was my mother was very intentional about that, and she was also very intentional about me pronouncing things correctly. But my father was also very involved because we used to do work every day. So my job was to clean the tires of my father's Renault T16 KMN 547. It was a white Renault car from France, and my job was to clean the tires, all the 4 tires, every single day. And my other job after school and after my parents come from work, specifically my father, was to brush my father's shoes every single day. So they were creating a routine and discipline that I learned how to structure my life based on that. So it helped me become very disciplined.
Yes.
And as this principle of Lenana used to say, Samuel Maneno, used to say, discipline is doing the right thing at the right time, in the right manner, with the right people to achieve the desired results. So my parents gave me that routine and structure from earlier on. And my late brother, the late Victor Atieno Warria, may God rest his soul in peace, he was at a technical high school. I don't know what they call it now, but that was a school dedicated for people who were techies back in the days.
Awesome.
And Victor was also a member of the Scout, so they used to go to Longo not a lot. But Victor also introduced me to a book called The Origins of the Human Species by Darwin. So I read that when I was just about maybe 10 or 11 years old. So it gave me a lot of curiosity about biology and human nature, and also our environment, and also our role as human beings as part of nature. We're not independent of nature. We're actually part of nature. So given that I was the 10th of 17 children, and my father had 3 wives, and we lived in Buruburu Phase 1, I learned a lot from my elder siblings, because I had 9 brothers and sisters in front of me, and I had 7 brothers and sisters after me. So I was the middle kid. I believe my role then, and still now, I act as a bridge, and I act as a person who understands both sides, the older and the younger. And in fact, the things I do now are very intergenerational and multi-generational, because my birth order lends itself for me being actually a connector. So naturally, I connect people, I connect systems, and we've built one of the best application programming interface at Africa Stocking Limited, which has very powerful APIs for communication and payments, and we were the originators also of the technology USSD in Kenya. So learning and reading is my staple. And also one other thing my mother did at home, we used to play a game where my mother would ask, you spell, when she was cooking, because those days was our Twitter or Facebook, we would gather around the stove when she's cooking with the stove, a real paraffin stove. Yeah. And my mother would say, tell me a car that begins with V. And I would say Volvo. Tell me a car that begins with V. Then I'll say Volkswagen. But she was checking about my understanding of my environment. You see that? Tell me a car that begins with A. I would say Audi. But she would put it down on paper with my other siblings and see who comes with them first. And this was a daily routine. So I became very aware of everything around me on a daily basis, because I knew in the evening when my mother is cooking ugali, in the Luo they say nudo kuon, she would ask us these questions. And then she'd ask us to also, once before the water boils fully, once she has put the flour, once the water is boiled, she would ask us to draw the map of Africa or the map of Kenya or the map of the world and point at different countries. So I didn't know then she was actually teaching us. And that was her best time to teach us what she wanted to teach us. And that became a natural progression from the hearth tales, which were done by our grandmothers. She just moved it to around a stove, a cooking stove, and her children gathered. My mother had 5 children, so we gathered around her. Yeah, and I remember that with a lot of fondness and joy, because she took that time to be present with us when she was cooking.
Yes, pretty much. But just before I ask you whether your future was essentially predetermined by how close then your mom was in making sure that you understood your environment, could you tell me how were you relating with the rest of your brothers and sisters in such a big family? This is what they say, Teddy.
Yes.
extended families,
Yes.
bigger families,
Yes.
it's not often that you find
Yes.
successful people from these families.
Yes.
Either one or two.
Yeah.
But from what you're saying, it's
Yeah.
like your father essentially just made
Yes.
sure that you were well provided for,
Yes.
and you had a system
Yes.
that you had to follow within the
There-
two
there-
families.
So
Yeah.
there was a system and a process
That's it.
that they created to create stability and to give us strength, which the Luos, they call it teko, which is power. And they made sure, when I think about it, I'll start.
Yes.
When I think about it, we're largely vegetarians. When I think about it, because we ate mito, amaranth, which is dek in the Luo, but it's amaranth in English.
Yes.
We ate managu or suga, and I think Wednesdays or Saturdays is when we had meat. But essentially, most of the time we had vegetables. So if you look at my old pictures, I'm very lean. But I only started eating a lot of meat when I went to the States,
That's
chicken
it.
and whatever, because that's the staple.
Yes, and we're
But
gonna
this
talk
com-
about that,
yes,
yes.
but this comes to the very question you asked me. So my father was born as the only son of his father and mother, because the kids who were being born before him were all dying. So my grandmother Rosalina Nina Ajuang from Kobuya in Mawego
Yes.
in Homa Bay was always praying and hoping she'll get a child. So after so many stillbirths, my father was born. So my grandmother took tremendous care and gave my father a lot of love as the only son. Soon after that, my grandmother tried again for a baby, got my auntie Trofena, who used to make clothes for the late Jane Kiano, for Maendeleo ya Wanawake leader at that time. And then my sister her sister Joyce was the last born. So my grandma Nina had only 3 kids. And then my grandfather had several wives, so he had other sons with the other women. But what I didn't know is that my uncle Smart, I always thought he was my father's blood brother,
That's it.
because I couldn't distinguish. But that's how strong and unified the families then
That's it,
were.
that's it.
And they lived in community, they lived in unity, and they lived with a lot of affection and love. So my father, because he didn't have his own blood brothers, he took us, his children, as his brothers, especially his sons. Because so in fact, the way my name came, my name is Teddy, but my nickname is Ted Watch. But because my elder brother Dan, when I was young, he was already studying at University of Röschlikon in Zurich. So when he came home during summer, he thought they're calling me Ted Watch, but they were actually calling me Ted Watt, because my father said I'm his relative. Watt in the Luo
I
is
see.
relative, or my brother. So my father would call me Ted Watt.
Yeah.
Because my father and my mother and my other mother, Leah,
Yes.
they named me Teddy Warria. And not a single day did I hear my mother call me Teddy,
Yeah.
because my mother and father always called me Ted. It's only maybe when I was reporting to school at Lenana is when my mother told them I'm called Teddy, because she had to fill the form.
Oh, you had to fill the form.
Yeah, because they
And
asked her.
and that's the first time that you had
It's the first
Teddy.
time I had her calling me Teddy. But my mother never called me Teddy. In fact, the most blessed name, when you call me Ted, I manifest a lot of blessings when you say Ted. But Teddy doesn't really cut it. But that said, my
Yeah.
brother thought I was called Ted Watch.
Yeah.
And because my elder siblings would always like to ask me a lot of questions. All the time.
That's it.
And but one of my sisters didn't like me asking her a lot of questions, because she thought I was bothering her. But one day my mother told her, when Teddy wants to ask questions, let him just
Let
ask
him
his
do that.
questions.
Yeah.
If you don't want to answer, then don't answer, but let Teddy ask questions. Because my mother wanted to spur or to nurture or grow my curiosity. Because I was as curious as a cat then, and I'm still as curious as a cat even now. And I'm I observe everywhere I go, I see everything in my surroundings.
That's it.
And I can name for you all the flowers, I can name for you all the birds, because my father liked flowers and trees.
Yeah.
We had a lot of poinsettia trees in Buruburu, with a lot of loquat trees, we have a lot of pawpaw, with a lot of Africa jasmine, which gives a very nice perfume at night. From after sunset, the tree just gives you a lot
I
of
know that
nice
tree. I know that
perfume.
tree. Yeah.
So that tree makes me feel a lot at home, and it reminds me of my parents. So my parents let me wander. and think and then ask questions. They never gagged me or caged me. So naturally, I became aware of my intellectual arena
Yeah.
and of my environment until today. So I'm still that child who asks questions.
Yes.
I'm still that person who is eager to know and then eager to share my knowledge and eager to transfer my knowledge everywhere I go, whether it's the States or whether it's China, whether it's South America, whether it's Japan. I do it willingly.
Pretty much. Ted, I want to take a shortcut now because your story is quite long.
Yes.
Let's talk about you after Lenana.
Yeah.
Because you find yourself now in New York, Ted. How did that come about? You like to think, back then, people leaving the country to go to New York.
Yeah.
It was a big story, and it was hardly heard of.
Yes.
How do you find yourself in the States in New York?
So the interesting thing about that is naturally I was born as a thinker and a doer. And my name, Teddy, means divine gift. So I've received a lot of God's or the Almighty's or Nyasai's favor. So my father passed on in 1997. And that was very devastating to me because I'd actually fallen very sick in 1996. I think I missed a term of school, third term. I was in 1995, I think.
That was
I was in probably third form.
Yeah.
I was tapped to become the next house captain of Kenyatta House, or the next chapel prefect.
For smart people, that is.
I think I'm okay. I wouldn't necessarily say as smart. I do my thing, and I'm happy to do my thing all the time.
I knew you were going to say that. You're not going to agree.
So I like doing my thing. So what I did is that I was on sick leave. People didn't know where exactly I was sick, but I was terribly sick. My parents, it's the first time I saw my mother cry because doctors didn't know what to do, my family didn't know what to do, but I was sick. And I thank the Almighty for His grace because I got through that. But my father died soon after. So it was a very big blow to me because if you lose your dad and you're 19, it's very sad and very devastating, especially at that time where there was structural adjustment issues and the economy wasn't working right. But I sat down and said, I have to go to the States. In fact, even before my father died, I told him, just as a joke, I'm going to study in the States. And my father was like, this kid, he's got to be kidding me.
What was the motivation?
Because I had always been reading Reader's Digest. And when I went to the Kaloleni library, which I used to walk from Buruburu to go and read these books, I read a lot of speeches about John F. Kennedy.
I see that.
His inaugural speech. And he used to say something like, don't ask what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. So I was completely imbued by the whole idea of America. And I believe that's the source of the latest technology and knowledge. And I was yearning and thirsty to go there by whichever means necessary. So by good fortune, I went to Strathmore to do CPA immediately after Lenana. And I took the evening classes because I couldn't afford going to the regular classes.
And that's especially after your dad
after
passed,
my form 4, and after my father's passed on. Everybody then went to do accounting because it was a sure thing to get a job.
To get employment.
It's a sure path. But I went there and I was probably the youngest together with my friend Nathaniel Choge. So Nathaniel Choge had just applied to MIT and other Ivy League schools. And so I had applied for a school called United World College. It's an IB system. They have 18 colleges around the world. So Father Paul Mimbi wrote for me an excellent letter of recommendation. In fact, I want to read it. It's only a paragraph.
Can you read it?
Yes. So when he wrote for me this, it opened for me doors of wanting to go to America. Because then my friend, Nathaniel Choge, he saw the letter. Then he told me, Teddy, you can get to so many schools in America on scholarship on the account of this one paragraph letter. I'll actually read it so that you see the power in it. So the registrar United World Colleges, student scholarship application, PO Box 24926 Nairobi, Kenya, February 12th, 1997. Confidential. To whom it may concern. Re Teddy Warria. I have known Teddy since February 1993. He is an intelligent and honest young man, well-behaved and hardworking. He even strikes me as being immensely charismatic. He is patient and accommodating and yet decisive, enterprising and full of initiative. Teddy works with due respect towards his superiors, cooperating and helping his colleagues. He is pleasant and understanding with his juniors. Through dedication, he manages his work well. I believe he deserves a scholarship from you. I hope you'll enjoy working with him. With every good wish, yours sincerely in Christ, Father Paul Mimbi, Chaplain, Strathmore College.
How true was that recommendation according to you, Ted?
It's actually true because I've
100%.
always, 100% I believe, because 20 years or 25 years later, it's still the same. I've not changed. I think I'm still the same guy that Father Paul Mimbi wrote. And that letter has gotten me into so many places, on scholarship or on fellowship, gotten me jobs, gotten me rare opportunities. Because after that, my friend Nathaniel Choge said, Teddy, you need to apply to college in the States. So he paid for me I.C.Ts. I think those days it was $20 or to do the I.C.T. 1, Scholastic Aptitude Test. So I did that, did well, and my English vocabulary helped me to do the verbal reasoning very well. So I got good scores. I also got very good scores on my TOEFL, almost everything in it. So it put me on the top of the pack. And then my teachers at Lenana, I helped them know how to write good letters of recommendation. Just instead of saying Teddy is hardworking, I asked them how they can describe me.
Hold on.
Yes. So and guess how
you helped the teachers.
Yes.
Too.
And guess how I did that? Guess how I did that?
Yeah.
This is important for Kenyans to understand.
Hold on. That's a good for teacher
Yeah.
for recommendation.
Yes, of course.
But then you're telling me, you see, if you say that, it can work.
Yes. No, because what they're going to write me was not going to work, man. So I helped them, and this is the way I told them.
Yeah.
So I looked at the New York Times.
As it?
They used to write very beautiful obituaries when people die, like one full page. And they describe you perfectly, if you may ask me. So I gave them a few of the copies and I asked them, read this. This is how you describe somebody. Don't describe me when I'm dead that way. Describe me in the letter.
Right now.
Right now, because I need it now when I'm alive so that I can get this scholarship.
Wait, and this is Lenana.
Yes, and this happened.
It's a top school in the country.
So my teacher specifically, this is my Lenana uniform.
Yeah.
I'm next to the priest. So the teacher, then Mrs. Dora Mganga, and now Miss Dora Kitala, wrote for me a beautiful letter that basically got me to almost 10 colleges in the US on scholarships. So that's
on
how
your
I
guidance.
Yes. With a little help. With a little help. So with a little help, I want to show you. So with a little help and guidance, I got in. And the beauty of it is, when I got in, my friend Nathaniel said,
I can see you now.
Write this. So the young nation picked it, and it was written Tips on Studying in the US. So this book became a big deal in Kenya, because those days people didn't have free internet or high accessible internet. So this became the Bible of applying to colleges in the US. It's called New Horizons, a practical guide to applying to universities in the United States.
We'll talk about that, Ted. Just before we go on this one, if you realize I'm now calling you Ted because I know what it means to you. I want you to take 15 seconds to respond to all the, less than 15 seconds, to respond to the next two questions that I'm going to put across to you. Now, because of the next part of this conversation, it's going to take us 21 minutes just to get done with it. We're going to look at now the professional Ted now. So take 15 seconds or less. What do you call a successful business, Ted, to you?
A successful?
Business.
A successful business is the one that feels a need in the community or society, at the same time is profitable and sustainable.
What do you think is the greatest value that you carry now in you that has helped you become the Ted that we know today?
The greatest value is that I recognize a subtotal or the totality of humanity and humans, and I'm able, through pattern recognition, which is a talent that I also have, to summon all knowledge from all the people I meet and to use it to create something that has never been created.
You're still watching the Captain's Arena. My name is Simba Kiage. Now, once we come back then, we're going to see Ted, the CEO, the co-founder, and by the way, just not in one business, he's just been all over. He's been in charge of competitions, and by the way, I'm going to introduce them to you. And then we see now What is he trying to achieve? I want to
Yeah.
talk about Africans talking shortly now.
Yeah.
So we see exactly Ted then in
Yeah.
different shoes now. You've learnt about this story. And by the way, what I told you, that was a shortcut. Talk to us at Look Up TV across all your social media platforms. I am Atieno Simba, the hashtag Captains Arena. So what is a bit complex in telling the story of a man who essentially breaks their story is that even what to pick them becomes a challenge
Yes.
because it's not just direct.
Yes.
No, it's not direct.
Yes.
It's a complex
But
story.
human beings are not supposed to be a single story.
It's not a story,
It's a
isn't it?
multi-layered
Yeah,
story
that's it.
on not just one country, in multiple
In
countries,
multiple countries as
in
well.
multiple cultures,
That's it.
with multiple races,
That's it.
and in multiple creeds.
See what I mean? It's not just as simple. So
Yeah.
even when you tell them, oh, I'm talking to that guy, they're like,
Yeah.
but you didn't cover everything. Of course, I can cover everything.
It's like a river.
It's like
Nile.
a river.
Yeah, it
I'm
flows.
limited to time and
Yes.
whatever it is that I can say now.
Yes.
But,
Yes.
like I said, we got to take a shortcut for the sake of this particular show, by the way. Now, let's get into the things that you've co-founded. In fact, I'm even leaving out some
Yeah.
of the biggest career achievements right now because they're just a lot.
Yes.
Good. Let's talk about Africa 2.0,
Yes.
where you're the president and
Thank you.
CEO
Yes. For Kenya.
for Kenya.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
So there was a clamor in 2007 in the States. I was in the States at that time in Texas, in a little town called Loveland in Texas, West Texas, where George Bush comes from. The former President George H.W. Bush and also George Walker Bush. And it was Obama rising. It was exciting. Because before we had read The Soul of the Black Mind by W.E.B. Du Bois, we had gone through some racist things in the States, and you learn and you leave. But now when the Obama magic came, it's Obama mania everywhere.
No, sir.
And Facebook was just coming in colleges like Harvard or MIT. People were telling you about Facebook, and I was wondering, gosh, what's this Facebook? But you had to be sent for an invite at that time. Somebody had to tag you to be able to get an account.
No, sir.
And also for Google, a friend of yours had to spare you an invitation. So mine, Nathaniel Choge, sent me an invite or join Gmail.
Yes.
And those days it came with googlemail.com or something
Yes.
like that.
Nathaniel keeps on being a consistent mention in your story.
Yeah, he's a good
even in
friend
your
of mine
career.
at that particular time.
Yes.
He worked with me very closely, and I appreciate him and acknowledge him, and I thank him for that. So, and his father was also a great mentor of mine, the late engineer Kipsang Choge. May God rest his soul in peace. He was the #1 in his at Alliance for mathematics and all that in A-level. But the important thing is that he got for me a Gmail account. I was excited. And then came in Obama. This is way past his 2004 speech that he gave at the DNC, where Secretary Kerry, John Kerry, allowed him to speak together with his wife, Theresa Heinz Kerry. Their family owns the Heinz tomato sauce. A friend of mine called Eunice Ajambo.
Yes.
She's from Uganda, and she went to United World College in Norway. She nominated me to be one of the first 100 leaders of Africa 2.0. Those days, our founder, Mamadou Kwijim Touré, was working for IFC in charge of investments in Africa. So he was looking, he had gone for World Cup in 2010, and Mandela challenged him. And Nelson Mandela, Nelson Rolihlahla Dalibunga Madiba, Mandela, that's how it's pronounced,
Mandela.
challenged him.
No, sir.
Instead of just coming to watch the World Cup, they should do more for Africa as the young people. And I believe Mandela gave financial contribution so that the young youth who had gone to watch the World Cup forms an organization that will take Africa forward. So Mamadou gathered 100 of us. We met in Mombasa in 2012. The Right Honorable Raila Odinga came and graced the occasion, and we launched the effort to write the Africa 2.0 manifesto. So it took us 8 months to do it online, with all the 40 leaders from all over Africa sending contributions online. Mamadou and Sefa Goho is now the chairman of Africa 2.0, collated it into a book, Africa 2.0 Manifesto. It was basically our vision, for what you wanted to see in Africa before 2063. And like fortune had it, Madame Zuma, Dr. Zuma, who was then the boss of African Union, picked the book and used to invite us a lot to AU. And together with UNECA, they found money to bring us to AU all the time to continue helping writing the Africa Agenda 2063. So it was very exciting for us because then we were seeing we were making a real contribution to Africa. So my category was in I.C.T and also in women and in the diaspora as levers of change. So I wrote together with Dr. Jacqueline Chimhanzi the part about empowering women here and in the diaspora. So I was very happy to do that. But then Mamadou asked me, write something about what you see I.C.T will be in future. Mm-hmm. So that time we were just beginning Africa's Talking with a product called SMS Voices, and which later morphed to smsleopard.com. And our offices are the regional offices opposite Nakumatt Prestige. But with that, we wrote a manifesto which is available at www.africa2.0.org. It's a very clear plan on what the youth and people in Africa should do so that we can leapfrog from where we are to where we need to go. We leapfrog the idea of the telephony fixed landline to mobile landline. And now, because even of that engagement with Africa 2.0, I went to 33 African countries. I thank Ethiopian Airlines for funding most of those trips. I thank Mamadou for showing me Africa. And because Mamadou showed me Africa, I was able to show so many youth Africa, including our own Senior Vice President of Africa's Talking, Graham Ingoho Muhanga.
Yes.
I took him to Nigeria for the first time, I believe in 2012. He had never boarded a plane, but now he has boarded so many planes, and he's even going to start do a master's before in Turkey and came back to lead our marketing expansion efforts in Africa as our Senior Vice President for Marketing. But had I not piqued also his curiosity, he may not have risen to greatness.
Yes.
And Graham likes saying, I believe in greatness today. Some of the people like the former UNECA Secretary General was part of Africa 2.0. Mogo Kibati, who is now the Telecom CEO, is part of Africa 2.0. Yeah, he's even at the back of the manifesto. He's now, and that time he was leading something called Kenya Vision 2030.
Yes, yes.
So we borrowed also a lot from Kenya Vision 2030
yes.
of how states or countries create visions and execute them. Because the Right Honorable Raila Odinga and the former late President Kibaki really supported Mogo Kibati together with Mr. Francis Mudaura to execute and to bring to life the Vision 20 as a flagship plan for the Republic of Kenya. So I was learning also under Mugo. We're traveling to him to different places. Mugo had a lot of hope in me. He still has a lot of hope in me. I ran the Africa 2.0 Kenya as the president and CEO. I brought in so many delegations around the trips we took around Africa.
Yes.
And I opened the doors for them to know they can do business in Africa, they can meet the other brothers and sisters and know them. Rather than just looking at Kenya as a contained country, I opened the doors for all of Africa and the diaspora, because the AU considered Africa to be one of the regions,
yes.
especially the diaspora. So I opened those doors, and I keep opening them, and it gives me tremendous joy because the late Ali Mufuruki, who was the co-owner of Zuku, was also an advisory board member of Africa 2.0, together with President Obasanjo was our chairman. And Mamadou actually camped outside his home so that he could, in Abekuta, to open the door and then ask him to become our chairman. Because we knew if we got President Obasanjo, we'll get the whole Africa. And that's exactly what happened.
When you look at Africa 2.0,
yes.
Ted,
yeah.
what would you say has been the key achievement of Africa 2.0? Which you would say that you had a direct influence.
I think the key achievement was producing the Africa 2 manifesto. In fact, I plan to publish it in Swahili and Dholuo so that it can reach the masses and the villages. Mm-hmm. But the key success that I can point out to, I put tremendous confidence and self-belief in the next generation of Africans, that we can do it. The Africa can do mentality and philosophy.
Yes.
We executed that. And that has had so many results, to the extent that President Barack Obama invited us to help him roll out his yearly program, Young African Leaders Initiative. We're probably one of the only organizations in Obama White House that is listed to have collaborated and helped him achieve the yearly program in 14 countries in West Africa.
Yes.
At that point, led by Sefa Goho Boatin at the Gimpa campus in Accra, Ghana.
That's it.
Yeah, so that was also another significant achievement.
Yes.
And the third achievement was that we've been able to put so many of our members into the right leadership positions in Africa and the diaspora. Name any organizations, we have our members till to date, influencing them in the Africa we want, not the Africa of our fathers or our forefathers, but the real true Africa that takes a lot of pride from modernism, but does not lose our value or our identity as a real true African, sons and daughters of Africa.
Pretty much. So let's dial it a bit, and I'm going to ask you about 2019, which was essentially among your busiest years, as you now as a professional.
Yeah.
So when did you start Africans Talking?
Yeah.
And what is the description of Africans Talking, Ted?
So Africa's Talking was started in an MIT dorm room in Boston, Massachusetts, by Eston Kimani and Sam Gikandi.
Yes.
It was just started as a name and as an idea, not as a company or business. But in 2010, I was invited through my friend, the late Timothy Mbarine, who just passed on by the way of diabetes DKNA a few weeks ago. He said, go to Lenana and see what's happening in Lenana. I hear the school is not doing well, it's run down, let's do something about it. So I came to Kenya. That was just before the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution. And Bill Clinton had, at the Clinton Global Initiative, introduced me to the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. He was then a Prime Minister. So when I came home, the late engineer Kipsang Choge, may God rest his soul in peace, he said, you need to meet Raila. I need to take you to meet Raila at his office at near Ajip House. So there was Odinga's press secretary called Dennis Onyango, then arranged for me to go and meet him. And when I'm meeting Odinga for the first time, wanted to go to schools. So Dennis Onyango was then organizing that. So I said, so Dennis charged me with helping him write the speech. And I was very happy to do that. So I wrote the speech called Nothing But the Best. But also, Dennis and whatever, they wanted me to arrange for Richard Leakey to come at the school and accompany the Prime Minister at that time. So but Leakey was out of the country in California raising money for Wildlife Direct, his organization. So I went there. Lo and behold, Odinga came 30 minutes before time. It was the first Mashujaa Day, the eve of the first Mashujaa Day. And you see, Lenana School was named after a Maasai hero, Oloibon Lenana, who was tricked by the whites to give him the land that built Lenana. So we spoke of him as a hero and as an example. You see that? But what had happened at that time when I came, Eston was looking for people to really co-found and start the company with him, because it was just a company by name. Yeah. So he met me at the New Stanley Hotel together with Zach Mwangi. Zach Mwangi became our head of tech, and I became the head of business development, and Eston was the CEO. We just started like that, and then Graham was in charge of client relations, and the administrator was Eston's sister, Wagaki, Rachel Wagaki Kimani. And then we had the tea lady who used to make for us tea, Sharon, who the company also gave us shares. That's how we started. And Sam Gikandi was working for Morgan Stanley, I believe either in Hong Kong or New York City. Yes. So he's working in the tech department. That's how the company started. We didn't have necessarily titles because we're all more or less co-founders. When you want to formalize the company, you have to have all these titles. But in Africa, you cannot have titles like those because we do business kanyakla together. So we do it in a round table. We don't do it in a square or a rectangle table. So there's no head. It's the African way. The CEO, the chair, that's a very Western concept. And Africa's Talking is an African company. It's not an American or a Western company. Even now we're at a round table. You're not the head of the table or I'm not the head. We are equal. Yeah. It's an egalitarian and equal balance system. So that's how we started Africa's Talking. In fact, I never had even an employment letter that I'm an employee. So I've never been an employee of Africa Stocking in that regard, because I just came in as a co-founder or a partner, and we just did the job.
Yeah.
And I did a handshake at Rehema place now. Then it was Meki place, or Natukot. It was actually Natukot. It has changed names so many times at the intersection of Ngong Road and Ring Road. That's where our office is, where they have Mchana restaurant, opposite Prestige. So in a small room downstairs next to Fab Guru, we started the business. And we used to work, we put our heads down, our thumbs up, and we worked like we're building a new Africa. From day one, in April 23rd, 2010. We have been no more than now, we're going to our 14th year. You see that? And we just worked. But the titles and all that kind of stuff came in when we were signing an agreement with IFC World Bank. Is when now all the titling came in the legal document and all that. But I've always viewed myself that we build the company from scratch. We are all co-founders. It should be the model in Africa, that we should all be co-founders. There should never be titles that this is that, because that interferes with the work and the business and the story. Yeah. But I acknowledge that we've had a fantastic work, and because of the name coming at an MIT dorm room with Eston and Sam when they began it as a name, but a business is in its execution and its profitability. So I made the first sale of an Africa Stocking product, which was a bulk SMS, and I was paid $290 by the Honorable Ngunjiri Wambugu. He was then running Change Associates. We still have, up to date, have the check framed, because it was our first money. Yes. And it proved to us that we can sell more. If you can sell one, you can sell two. If you can sell two, you can sell three. And I think our third customer was the Honorable Anyang Nyongo, the governor of Kisumu now, but then he was the Minister for Medical Services. Yes. So we built for them an SMS messaging for the kids who wanted to know their exam centers from KMTC. Yes. And also we built something from the blood organization that is based out of KNH for blood donation. We built for them an SMS-based confirmation. So he paid us 88,000 for that. And that paid for us rent for 3 months. It's a big deal at that time, between 2010 and 2012. Yeah, so that's when the real business started. Hence, I was then labeled or called head of business development.
I say that now. It's a company that is grown to 18 countries.
Actually, now it's 23 or 26 countries.
23 or 26 countries. Mm-hmm. Did you foresee this sort of rapid growth, you were saying?
So the original version, which was then and now, was we're building a Pan-African company from the word go.
Yes.
Yeah. Because every Kenyan imagines or appreciate their small land in Kenya and they want to guard it, fight over it, kill over it. But we saw our land as being our IP. Our biggest land is between our 2 ears and in the products and services that Africa Stocking makes.
That mentality,
yeah,
a mentality, how you describe here you are, you're Africans by the end of the day, but you're working with people who don't care about titles, just don't see the country itself, they're looking outside. Because of the exposure of your friends when you're starting this company.
Yeah.
Would you say that that's why you've been able to grow to more than 20 countries now?
Yeah, but also that's the will and the desire to make a change in Africa in our lifetime. Yeah, because I don't want to say, my father brought me this far, my grandfather brought me this far. I have to take it to the next level. And Africa must leapfrog. And for Africa to leapfrog, we have to create a connected Africa that is both connected by basic feature phones, because almost 75% of Africans have basic feature phones. So the SMS leopard.com technology was an SMS to web technology. That was the first technology. We built that loop so that we can reach people in the grassroots. Yes. And we achieved that. Then by accident, we had an intern from Princeton who, when I was leading a hackathon, that time Sam was in Hong Kong and Eston was with his wife in South Africa for 5 years. We did a hackathon and came up with a solution for an application programming interface. And now it's our leading business at Africa Stocking. And it was because of an intern from Princeton, together with Zach, myself, and Graham, we just sat on it and came up with that. And that's, it happened not with a plan. We were just working, building and innovating and iterating.
Yes.
And we came up with that.
Pretty much. Now, Ted, I want us to jump
Yeah.
out of that particular one into what would show then how people looked at you. Because all of a sudden now, there's a Ted somewhere, he's got a fantastic story.
Yeah.
When he's talking about leadership and entrepreneurship, you gotta have him. So I'm
Yeah.
just gonna summarize for you exactly what you did in 2019.
Yeah.
And the question that I'm getting from there is, what was the most important fit for you in all the things that you got into 2019?
Yeah.
You were part of an advisory board of the Wellspring Foundation,
Yes.
education and non-profit focusing on scaling social impact globally,
Yeah.
and also curates the Castle Gathering held at the prestigious Castle.
Yeah.
I didn't even know.
It's still there in Italy. It's in Tuscany.
Is it?
And it's run by my friend Simone.
Yes. Yes.
So we bring leaders who are balanced,
That's it.
leaders who view the world as a shared space for everybody that is inclusive,
Yes.
and that is also willing to create a sustainable world where profits are shared,
Yes.
and also where the earth is taken care of,
Yes.
and also where we self-care. Yeah, because you can't build all these things and you don't self-care. So that's the kind of society or community that Simone built.
That's it.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And then later, you're made judge of the 100 and change competition.
Yes.
All right.
Which still I am.
Which still you are to date, isn't it?
Yeah, that's from the MacArthur Foundation.
MacArthur
So they
Foundation.
run the Genius grant,
Yes.
which I think is for either $5 million or something like that.
Yes.
It's the most outstanding prize you can get for a global change maker. So I'm one of the judges, and so they send me scripts. So I'll receive the first scripts in September. Then I go through some of the world's best ideas and score it. So the winner gets $100 million. I usually have a time of my life when I'm scoring them, because it's a whole idea and company and organization that I have to take 3 hours per entry to just score it.
What are you looking for, Ted, when you're looking at this?
I'm looking for an idea that is worth talking about, an idea that changes life, has high impact, low cost, and an idea that the leader is aware of himself and aware of our world. An idea that I know would survive more than 10, 20 or 30 years.
Ted, I'll call you a leader.
Yeah.
I'll call you an author.
Yeah.
I'll call you an entrepreneur.
Right.
But Ted, what would you like to be called?
I'd just like to be called Teddy Warria, the son of George and Frida Warria from Kisumu. I am Kisumu. That's all I want. In fact, on my epitaph, I just want them to write Son of the Nile, actually.
That's it.
That's enough. Yeah. That's enough.
Out of all the books that you've written, and I
Yes.
know there are many that are going to come through you,
Yes.
Ted,
Yes.
what is it that you would like people to know about the author,
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
What is it? What is it?
Simple. I like them to know where I come from, who I've been with, where I've gone, and where I'm going. So my summation of my book, Son of the Nile, Nile being my life's metaphor, is that in the ebbs and flows of the Nile, whether it collects clay, bodies, carcasses, it eventually goes to the Mediterranean and to the rest of the world. So even my own life, in terms of triumphs and trials, I keep on going, because ultimately the flow will lead to the Mediterranean and to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So I want, out of all the books I've written, my life's metaphor is really Son of the Nile. And in fact, today, this morning, I thank Elvis Kent, because he released my life's emblem, which is a Nile tulip, also known as Ciala, or the Nile trumpet, or Macamia lutea in Latin. It's an orange bulb of a flower. It grows on a tree that grows about 8 feet tall. The trees grows along the Nile and in the Lake Victoria region. So that will forever be my life's emblem and insignia. And going forward, I'll actually be wearing it on my lapel. The way Moi wore his red rose, I'll wear that.
Yes.
And also, I went to Lenana School, whose motto was nothing but the best. We didn't have any crazy type of motto. And Buruburuan Primary School, where I went with Felix Kimani, It was forward ever, backward never. So my insignia is just Son of the Nile Tulip. Because I want to be ever fresh, ever green, ever productive, and to bring a ray of sunshine and radiance in everybody I encounter.
For somebody whose mind is always asking,
Yeah.
is always looking for answers, is always looking to describe,
Yeah.
what do you do when you're telling your mind, no, we're not gonna do that, let's let off?
I sip water and I breathe and I look at birds. And I like the Lake Victoria, so I usually take a boat and I let it go deep into the lake 2 to 3 hours.
Yes.
Not a perfect steamer, regular dugout canoes.
How's that?
And I just take it. And sometimes I like facing the sun.
Yes.
And I let the canoe go straight into the sun.
Directly into the sun there.
Yeah, and it gives me a lot of peace. And I like great music.
Yes.
My favorite musician in Kenya is, of course, Sauti Soul. Chimano, and I like Kuliko Jana.
Naza.
In fact, it was sung to me when I was teaching at United World College in Montezuma in New Mexico.
Yes.
I was very shocked when the African choral sang it for me during their graduation. I was so pleased, and it took me back home right away. My other musicians are like Ayub Ogata, Kothbiro, Jamriambo by Musically Speaking. And Susanna Wio's Kisumu Bear or Kisumu 100, it gets me wherever I am. Or Wamiel, which means let's dance. Or Lo, which means we are from soil and we'll go back to soil. And Jeffrey Oriema's The River. So, which the refrain is Nafikiri Kurudi Shamba. I'm thinking of going back home. And home is where I finished my book, Son of the Nile, at Kamnua village, Warria, Kamnua village in the picturesque Nyabondo Plateau. So that has been my thing. And because Africa is Talking is the name of our company, we like saying Africa is talking. Are you listening? So our company is made to power communications for small businesses and developers across Africa. With ease, we want them to run their businesses with ease.
Pretty much. Take 15 seconds. That's the only time that we have left. And this is how you're going to sign out. When is all this going to stop for you?
When I rest.
Now you know. I told you the story that we're going to talk about. And I've tried to take shortcuts. And by the way, there's just so much that this guy that we had on the set today can say and talk about his life journey and his career. We couldn't kill it. So my director telling me Simba, we are out of time. Guess what? Probably now, I might call him one of these fine days. Just sit down together, you know, and talk for 6 hours about his life, career, his journey, what he's done, the people he's met. The people he's met themselves will be a story for 2 hours. But guess what? He's a real captain of that particular industry. And guess what? Look for Africans talking. Guess what? They know exactly what it is that they're into. That's something that I also didn't want to get into because the story is more important than just knowing about that particular company. So knowing the guy behind it is more important for us right here on the Captain's Arena.
Thank you.
Teddy, thank you very much for coming, man.
Much appreciated.
Yeah.
And as the chief storyteller at Africa's Talking, I'm not going to tire to tell the story of Africa as we build a new Africa.
I'll see you next week for another one. My name is Simba Kiage. Good night and goodbye.